I want you to imagine that you're with me in the Sahara Desert. So I want you to picture that in your mind. I want you to imagine just how hot that is. It is literally like opening an oven when you're cooking a meal. The heat just hits you and you go, God. I want you to imagine the whoop, 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 as a helicopter goes over me sideways at about 100 feet above me. The reason I'm there is I'm in the toughest foot race on earth, the Marathon des Sables. It's a 250-kilometre race across the Sahara on foot. And I'm carrying everything I need for me for the entire week in a rucksack on my back. I've got goggles on, I've got a mask up around my face, keeping the dust and the sand out of my eyes. And the wind can be up to 40 miles an hour while you're trudging through the sand and through the dunes. All around me, while I'm smiling and working my way through the desert, are other people in this race who are having a miserable time. And in fact, on the first day of that race, 100 people out of the 1,000 were timed out and didn't make it to the last checkpoint. There were people all around me who were over the edge and having a miserable time. And yet, through the middle of it, was the non-athlete, smiling, listening to John Mayer on his headphones, and I think I was eating chicken curry from a freeze-dried bag. During that race, and since that race, I've begun to get an idea of what it is sometimes that perhaps gives me the edge over other people when I do these kind of extreme events. And so what I did was start to think about that during that Marathon des Sables race and since, and that's become a central idea, which is something that I want to share with you today. A lot of you, when you think of over the edge, a lot of people think of kind of epic pictures of people doing epic things. So you might imagine me crossing a desert, or as a diver, somebody that would be diving on dives that I've done in Egypt where I might be 3 hours from the surface. But the reality is that those moments, those epic pictures, those epic moments, and those epic moments you see lots of people doing, we're not over the edge. We're anywhere but near the edge. And the edge is actually a very, very, when you go over the edge, it's a very, very ugly place to be. I would have a slide to show you, but unfortunately I don't. But over the edge is ugly, it doesn't often end well, and it's not glamorous. So the idea that I started to form was, what is it that I put together that means that often when I do these extreme events, I don't have a problem? So I started to think about what it was that gave me an edge sometimes when I'm in these competitions, often with races with people that are much, much better runners than I am. And I realized that one of the things that I used to do was a series of controlled failures or controlled tests that allowed me to fail epically sometimes and in hilarious ways, but not when it really, really counted. And those little series of little tests and little failures and little problems meant that on those days when it really, really counted, those days when you have that little word with yourself just before you do something, going, okay, come on, Evans, this is it, this is really important now, don't mess this up. You absolutely nail it, and you don't have a problem. If I take you back to a year before this race, the moments that I started doing these failures happened mainly in February. And February is a significant thing, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But February is just before when this desert race is in April. So I started doing lots of tests of kit and food and shoes, and things went epically wrong. I broke bags, I broke trainers, I broke every piece of kit you could think of. My record was 1 hour, 40 minutes before I broke a piece of sports kit in testing. And what happened with that in my head was I started embracing what I started to call failure February. And that's the message that I want to get across to you today, is failure February. The good news is it doesn't have to be in February. And the failure is not necessarily a negative thing, it's actually a positive thing. Every time you have a minor failure in life, you say, okay, well, what did I learn from that? And how can I avoid that from happening again? So I broke everything in training, and I mean everything, including myself. I went out, did nighttime runs, ran into trees by mistake, got a better torch as a result. And so when I went out to the desert, I was smiling and listening to John Mayer on the headphones and having a pretty good time most of the time, while people around me who hadn't tested things, who hadn't embraced a failure February concept, had a pretty miserable time. And it became apparent to me that you could actually see these people because their rucksack was completely clean, their clothes were really good, their trainers had hardly been run in, so they hadn't tested anything. So they weren't giving themselves the best opportunity. So when I got back from the desert, when I finished, and I did finish, and I survived, I didn't die in the desert, I was asked to be an administrator on a Facebook group for desert runners. And so I wrote a blog about Failure February, and I put that on the internet, and I directed some of the people from that group to go read it. And what happened was brilliant. About a week later, my Facebook feed filled up with hashtag Failure February. And there were some glorious failures. There were two people that went out and got hypothermia, basically, and got taken. They were picked up by their parents. These are people that were like 40 years old. Their parents had to come out and rescue them from the South Downs Way. There was one guy that posted a photo of his trainers. He got them really wet on a 2-day run, and he put them on top of a radiator, a really hot one, to dry them, and the inner soles to the side. And he posted the picture the next day with a hashtag Failure February because the insoles had got super hot and had shrunk to about that big. And he now had a 55-kilometre run to do that day with insoles that large. What was even funnier was, and I would have put the slide up to show you, but that person was me. Oh, we're off. Okay, so we're going to just get ahead to where we should be. Okay, that's what over the edge looks like. Okay, so okay, it's not pretty. I'm in the wrong clothes, I've got far too hot, I've actually got a fractured leg in that picture, but I carried on running for another 36 miles. So my point earlier was about over the edge and how it looks. So let me take you forward. So this is my big idea, and you can see it's not very big. This was, just to recap very quickly, this was my first Failure February. This is me running in a heat chamber at Kingston University until I got so hot they pulled me out of the chamber. I won't tell you where they put the thermometer. Okay? Oh, sad times. But you can see I've got pictures of broken bags, broken trainers, everything there. I broke everything. You see me tweeting, sometimes quite annoyed at companies going, I've had this bag 4 days and it broke. But the point was, that bag didn't break for me when I was in the desert when it was important. That's the blog I wrote. And this is pretty much where we are now. So this is Failure February. And this was suddenly my feed on Facebook. And in fact, you can see I've protected the innocent there on the top right. The Lee is me. And that's my shoes with the insoles half the size that they should be. But the point is, I won't ever do that again. And the other people here were talking about epic failures they'd had and miserable times and kit that had broken. But every single person in that group that was posting about Failure February got it. They completely got it. Instead of being angry and upset at themselves and feeling like they'd failed, they knew that every failure like that was a failure that wouldn't occur when it counted. Okay? A couple of weeks ago, I decided to broaden my horizons as a runner, and I decided to do some obstacle course races. Being me, rather than just looking for a nice, easy one, I did do a Santa inflatable 5K, but we're not going to count that because that was just good fun. I signed up for a thing called the Nuts Challenge in Dorking, not far from here, and it's rated as the toughest obstacle course race in the UK. So very typical me, I thought, if you're going to do a race, do the hardest one. It's 8 hours. It's a slog through cold water. It has 400 obstacles, and the attrition rate is horrendous. Only about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people that start it finish it. So I only have a 1 in 5 chance of finishing this race. And despite that, I signed up. What I did in February was embrace Failure February. I sought out an army instructor who happens to pace very high on this course and knows this course like the back of his hand. And I sought out private tuition with him with a small group of other people. And I had some epic Failure February moments. There's an amazing video I'm not going to show you of me trying to tackle a 9-foot wall for the first time. And I literally bounced off it. But 2 or 3 sessions later, I'm flying over that wall because I know exactly how to do it. There were these cargo nets that you climb up, and at the top I'd be kind of wobbling over the top and then let myself down the other side. And this guy Michael would say, no, put your hands here and forward roll over the top. And the first time I said, there's no way I'm doing that. But a couple of sessions later, forward roll over the top, super, super quick. 2 days before the event, I met up with Michael and did 1 lap of the course in exactly the clothing I wanted to wear to keep me just warm enough, but not so warm I couldn't move very easily. And it meant I knew the course exactly in my head. So when I turned up 2 days later, when the weather was atrocious, I went out there and I was the best that I could be because of all the controlled failures I'd done prior to that. I did the 8 laps. I actually qualified for the World Obstacle Course Race Championships in Canada by mistake. And that wasn't really my intention, I just wanted to kind of have a go. But my point was that of about 250 people that set out, only about 60 of us finished that course, and I was one of them. Was it because I was the fittest? Probably not. Was it because I was a brilliant obstacle course racer? No. But had I embraced failure February and made every failure on the way? Absolutely. So this is all very well, but most of you guys, I assume, don't do stupid long runs every weekend and disappear into the unknown. So how is this relevant to you? And my answer is that it's very relevant to you. And what I want to do is give you a couple of examples of how you can embrace failure February. If you've got that crucial job interview that you might be going for, instead of doing a bit of a Google search on the company and turning up and winging it, what's to stop you doing the route that you need to do to travel to get to that job interview, checking that the parking's okay or that the tube or the train isn't a nightmare, so that you ensure you're not going to turn up flustered? What's stopping you from almost being a little bit creepy and looking at the people coming and going from the building and getting a gauge for how the people in that company dress so that you're not overdressed or underdressed? There's lots of things you can do in advance to minimise the chances of things going wrong on that moment when it's really important that it's absolutely bang on for you. And you can argue that you could apply the same thing to that crucial first date that you want to do. You know, everybody's got a story of a first date from hell that's just gone to pieces. But instead of booking somewhere and hoping everything goes okay, there's nothing wrong with going there the week before to a restaurant where you might meet somebody and find out that actually Thursday nights is kids eat free night and there's food halfway up the walls and actually you can't hear a word that you're saying, or that the romantic table in the corner is actually by the door and the door opens and shuts and you get a cold blast of air every 20 seconds. So you can embrace failure February and all those things that you do that are challenges that you face during the day that are important. If they're that important, you can embrace failure February for it. So we come forward to now. And I just want to show you how I still use failure February now. I've stupidly signed up for a 625-mile foot race, continuous foot race, this year through most of the UK, as far as I can tell. It's obviously quite tough because no one's actually ever finished it. Interestingly, we get to February again, and because nobody's ever finished it, I started in February going out and running all the sections of the course. It's called the Monarch's Way, the Monarch's Way Ultra. So here's a tweet of me. You'll notice it's in February. And I went out and did a 200-kilometre weekend, self-supported, sleeping in a bivvy bag. And I can tell you, I had some epic fails on the way. Things went horribly wrong. I actually only made 150 kilometres. Now, for some of you, you might say, well, 150k is still pretty good. But for me, it was a bit of a failure. But I learned from the stuff that I learned out there. Now, there are going to be guys on that race this year that are better runners than me, that have been further with more experience. But my failure Februaries may just give me the edge. Maybe. I'll have recce'd the entire route. No one else on that race this year will have run the entire course. There are epic numbers of areas where it's difficult to navigate, where you get lost. I calculated that for every 10 hours that I was running, I was making an hour and a half of mistakes in navigation. That adds up to an entire day of the race lost that I won't have when I do this race. So as a self-confessed non-athlete, I may well have given myself the edge over people that are much more experienced and much fitter than I am. May also not come as a bit of a surprise for you that I embrace failure February in other places. So when I got asked about doing a TED Talk, the first thing that I did was download a book by the guy that created TED Talks on how to do a TED Talk. And I emailed Sophie and said, Sophie, just run me by the other people, and I wanted to make sure that my talk was as relevant as it could be on the day and in keeping with what some of the other people were talking about. I literally failure February'd my own TED Talk, and you're seeing the end result of that literally now. This is me here yesterday. The reason I tweeted this was to make a point to you guys about failure February. I even came and had a look at the venue yesterday. So I knew exactly what to expect when I came here. I knew, for example, that they were going to put a radio mic on me, and I don't normally wear a belt. So I've deliberately worn a belt today because I found out that I needed to. It would appear I should have asked some questions about overhead PowerPoints and how to use the thing. But you know what? I'm going to take today as a learning experience, and the next time I do something, I get to tell people about the time I did a TED Talk and it all went wrong. Yeah, so for me, it's a failure February. It just happens to be in March this time. I guess my point is, it's fantastic showing you photos of me crossing the desert and telling you how amazing it is, and I can easily tell you these great stories. But what I really want to do is inspire you to go out and do amazing things. But I want you to come back with both your legs, yeah? Over the edge is really ugly. It's terrible, and it won't encourage you to go do stuff again. I'd like you, when you do these epic things and these exciting things, and also these things in your normal life that can be a challenge, I want you to be the best person you can be at those bits. So I want you to embrace my little control failures and my failure February concept so that you don't go over the edge at the very moment that it counts. Thank you very much.